It's important to remember how profoundly the drug thalidomide changed drug testing in Canada. It made it much tougher. In the late 50s and early 60s, pregnant mothers with morning sickness were given thalidomide with minimal testing. And pretty soon, thousands of babies were born with terrible deformities. Many of them died, but the ones who survived are now aging. Governments are taking care of some of them, but there's this other group whose bodies show every indication that their mothers took thalidomide as well, who can't provide the proof.
Every minute was a struggle.
Everybody makes fun of you because you're different.
I've always felt this deep sense of shame.
It is sometimes hard to find the forgotten, when their voice hasn't been very loud, and particularly if they don't want to be found. To meet Barb Blair means a long drive into northern British Columbia's logging country, deeper into the wilderness where there is no power, where shelter is handmade, and where if you don't want to be seen, you don't have to be. It took us a while, but eventually we spotted the compound she calls home in the shadow of a mountain, and we're quickly won over by the warmth of her greeting.
No, we got a little lost. You're pretty far in here, Barb.
Living off the grid is a physically demanding life for anyone. The mundane must be carefully planned, and everything takes time.
For day-to-day things like cooking, even having a shower, something as simple as that. I have to have the wood cut in order to put the cook stove on, in order to heat the water. I have to plan everything.
Why would you live in such difficult circumstances? Do you have a choice?
Right now I probably don't, but I do love it. I love the isolation. I feel whole here. I feel at peace with myself.
Do you feel safer here?
I do feel safer,
because people might not stare?
Yes, for sure.
Even in her mid-50s now, Barb still feels like an outcast. Always has, because of the deformity she was born with after she says her mom took a free thalidomide sample from her doctor in 1960.
From what I understand, she would have taken it sometime in November.
Because she was feeling morning sickness?
Oh, she had terrible morning sickness, I was told.
So what did your mom tell you? Did she admit that she felt a little shamed?
She felt very ashamed about what happened, yes. When I was approximately 6, 7 years old, and I had come home from school, I was so happy because I had something that I thought I would really do well with show and tell. And I said, Mom, I'm going to hold up my hand and I'm going to tell the class what happened about the pill you took to cause me to be like this. And my mom's face, she went into shock almost, and she went really quiet. And she said to me, I don't think that's a very good idea. It was the first time in my life that I ever felt shame about my own body.
Barb is one of 24 or so Canadians who have been told by doctors all their lives they are thalidomide survivors. But government compensation packages have never considered them that.
All those in favor of the motion will please rise.
Parliament has recognized its responsibility to some. In 2014, voting to offer annual pensions and a lump sum payment of $125,000 to most thalidomide survivors. To date, that's 122 people, Canadians who could prove beyond any doubt their lives have been impacted by their mothers being prescribed thalidomide. They had the original medical records from more than 50 years ago, or the doctor who prescribed the pills was still alive and would admit it, or they had copies of the original prescription. Those are the only documents Health Canada will accept as proof of thalidomide use. Barb and others like her can't provide any of that documentation.
The criteria right now is too strict. I'm part of a different category of the thalidomide babies. We're the sample babies. That's very important. This is what the government has to understand.
It's true. In 1959, 2 years before thalidomide was licensed for prescription in Canada, it was made available in free sample packets. No records have ever existed of the sample babies.
I'm not quite good enough for the government to classify right now as a registered thalidomide. I'm lost.
I look at you, obviously, I can see the deformed hand.
Right. I have focomelia in my hand. I have fingernails that grow, and then they stop.
Is that all that there is?
Arm and shoulder, my neck, my ankles. I have very limited motion. I can't squat. My right hand, the joint has formed, but it has never bent from birth.
How much pain have you been living with?
I think I've been living with pain almost all my life.
And Barb says her pain is growing as her unique bone, muscle, and nerve structure ages. Studies show the thalidomide generation is aging much more rapidly than the general population. As we approach our 60s, you and I,
Yes.
naturally we begin thinking of what the next 20 to 30 years will be like. When you think of that, what does that mean for you?
The pain in my body, with even the joints and everything, they've started wearing down long before my 50s. So that's always been in the back of my mind. What am I going to do? How am I going to be able to take care of myself?
It is the same worry that consumes Noella Hébert. She lives in a small Acadian village in New Brunswick, and she's also terrified about the future.
I don't like to say the words, but I think I'm going to lose everything financially. What I built, I'm going to lose.
You'll lose your independence.
I'm going to lose my independence.
Noella is most comfortable reclining for long conversations. She is also a so-called sample baby who has been rejected for compensation. The doctor that tended to your mother isn't alive?
No, no.
And did that clinic leave any records that you know of?
Not all destroyed.
When the government says you can't prove that thalidomide did this to you, what are they telling you?
They're telling me that you're excluded again, like I was excluded all my life.
Noella is severely disabled. She's missing her left arm and her right leg. On the day we visited, she was in severe pain, even worse than most days.
Right now, I have back pain. I have the Harrington rod in my back, and I got some screws and nuts and bolts up to my last disc, and it's herniated right now. And I have a sciatic nerve pain. I have some kind of tennis elbow under my leg.
Do you need to take a break right now in this interview? Okay, let's do that. Let's do that, because that's an incredible list.
Yeah. Oh.
Can I help you, or you're? Yeah. The pain and level of disability Noella copes with makes her accomplishments in life all the more remarkable.
Your spousal supports, I would do it.
She earned a law degree and still has her own practice. She has, in fact, done a lot of things that people told her were impossible.
I proved them wrong. I arm wrestled for a while. I won championship of New Brunswick.
You did?
Yes, I did.
At what age?
I was 16. So I got that trophy.
I'm sitting across from New Brunswick's arm wrestling championship of like a certain year. Good for you.
Yeah.
It sounds like you wanted to live a no excuses life.
No excuses life.
But now Noella says she needs the government compensation and its pension so she can continue to work and live independently and not be institutionalized, which might end up costing taxpayers more.
I'd like to continue working because it's my pride and joy, but I don't know if I'll be able to do it because I need so much. I need ramps, I need space for a power chair. I have 21 years in my law practice, and it should be the best years of my life with the experience, and it's the worst.
Noella, like Barb, has had doctors tell her deformities fit the profile of a thalidomide survivor. But there is no medical test to prove thalidomide is the cause. So the government insists on what it knows best, a paper trail, which samples don't leave, or time has erased.
The cracks that we have fallen through, myself and others, in order just to even get to this stage because of the samples that were passed out. You know, it's like we're being victimized again in some ways.
A restrictive system.
Up until now, the process seems to have been working very well.
Leaves some victims behind.
Perhaps she doesn't know all the answers.
When W5 continues.
To this day, the thalidomide horror is held up as an example of all that can go wrong when drugs aren't properly tested before they're approved. Canada and many other countries prescribed it for expectant mothers suffering from morning sickness. But in the late 60s, W5 first reported on the consequences of Health Canada not being vigilant.
But this drug, called thalidomide, advertised as safe even for pregnant women, did finally cause the birth of 7,000 deformed babies throughout the world.
German drug maker Chemie Grunenthal publicly claimed that thalidomide was safe, but privately, they had been warned about possible links to deformed babies early on and covered it up. In the end, at least 10,000 babies were born worldwide with startling birth defects from thalidomide. Only about half of them survived, and they suffered a dizzying array of health problems: missing or deformed arms and legs, muscle and nerve damage, heart and kidney disease, plus problems which age is now revealing. This is a lifetime of medical.
Yes.
In his St. Catharines home, Michelle O'Neill says his mother was also given free samples of thalidomide, denying him the paper trail to prove it's what led to his deformities.
I kept this to show a proof of everything that was wrong with me.
That's a lot wrong with you. Look how thick that is.
I wasn't in good shape at all. I had many malformation, and attention needed to be done right away.
So what did it mean for you growing up?
I never went to kindergarten. I was at the hospital from birth almost till I was about 6. Like I would be in and out, in and out, in and out, surgeries, this, that, sickness.
Looking at this. In order to try to qualify for the government's pension and payout to thalidomide survivors, Michelle has tracked down 900 pages of his personal medical files. How many months of work does this represent to you?
We're talking years.
How many years?
Well, at least 5.
Wow. So at nowhere in your medical record did any doctor assess you as a thalidomide victim?
No. None, ever. Unless I'm missing pages.
So without direct documented proof, Michelle tried supplying the next best thing, his mother's word.
I got an affidavit from my mother that she did took the pill. But they say, no, this is not.
So your mother's word isn't enough?
No. So then we went and got the affidavit signed and stamped from the doctor. And I still was refused on the other 3 criteria. And we just ran around and tried to get all those papers for them. And at the end of the day, they said, thank you, but you don't satisfy.
He even got genetic testing done that shows his deformities are consistent with thalidomide exposure. Is there anything else in medicine that would account for malformations like this?
I asked the same question to the people who did my genetic testing. And for me to have everything that I have, I would have to have 5 diseases that I don't have.
And what did the authorities say about that genetic test?
Obviously, it wasn't good enough. So 5 or 7 PhDs sitting together saying, yeah, this must be this, is not good enough for them.
Like Michelle, Noella Hebert and Barb Blair have provided affidavits from their mothers and a long list of opinions from medical experts and genetic tests to support a claim their deformities are likely the result of thalidomide. So genetic testing says what about you?
It says that every other cause that could be this is not.
So they've eliminated anything else?
Anything else.
I have many doctors, many specialists that have put right in, quote, Barb has thalidomide teratogenesis, primarily affecting left arm. This has been mentioned by maybe 12, 13 doctors.
Why isn't that good enough for the government?
Because I don't fall into their rigid, outdated criteria.
Michelle's frustration led him and a dozen others he connected with on Facebook here in the late fall, hoping to ask directly for the compensation criteria to be expanded. They met in the offices of Conservative opposition MP Gordon Brown, who has raised the issue in question period several times.
Mr. Speaker, this is a disgrace. When is the minister going to fix this?
But the Health Minister, Jane Philpott, has not budged in insisting only original documented proof of thalidomide use will be accepted for compensation.
An objective review process was used to assess individuals to determine who is eligible for financial support.
Even though, as Michelle knows, other countries have found ways to be more flexible in assessing thalidomide claims.
The solution that I'm proposing is a panel of doctors, like they do in the UK.
And what happens in the UK?
The person goes see doctors, they examine, they read the files, and then they decide. They say, well, yes, this makes sense, or no, this doesn't make sense.
And so when you've asked the health minister, or when you've asked the bureaucrats, why don't you create this panel, what do you hear back?
Nothing.
They have no answer?
No. They believe that their system is good.
W5 requested a formal interview with the health minister over several weeks, but we were turned down. Eventually, though, her office agreed she would answer questions in the foyer of the House of Commons. So, we waited, alongside the parliamentary press pack, for our opportunity, uncertain of how long she would engage us. Minister Philpott, Kevin Newman for W5. I'd like to ask you about the thalidomide compensation program and whether you're prepared to expand the criteria beyond the documentation that some people simply can't provide.
Well, to start with, I want to say that, of course, the story of thalidomide, which goes back now about half a century, is a tragic story, and certainly have every sympathy for victims of thalidomide. As you know, there is a process that was put in place some time ago in order to appropriately compensate victims, and I'm pleased to say that that process seems to be working. There are a number of additional victims who have been identified.
So have every one of those 25 additional victims been part of the existing criteria that you set as government, or have exceptions been made?
Well, I don't go into specific details of the cases. That's not my role as Minister of Health.
But you set the criteria.
The criteria were actually set under the previous government. The compensation package was set some time ago, and I'm pleased that that process seems to be working well, as there have been other people who did not meet the initial criteria.
Well, some people, Minister, just on thalidomide, would you consider the UK model where doctors actually adjudicate some of these cases where there isn't sufficient documentation? It was 50 years ago. A lot of documents have been destroyed or are missing.
Well, as I say, I'm pleased with the fact that up until now, the process seems to have been working very well. I've heard, obviously, some very concerning stories about people who weren't identified by the initial process, and I'm pleased that there have been these 25 additional cases that were able to be considered under review.
So is your mind open to something in the future?
At this point, there's no plan to change the process, but obviously we're concerned about victims, and we want to make sure that they're all treated fairly.
It was not the answer the group was hoping to hear. There aren't that many asking for help, or that the criteria be more flexible. Just a couple of dozen Canadians. But for now, they remain on the outside, feeling forgotten. For Barb Blair, the rejection feels personal because the health minister was born less than a year before her.
But for the grace of God, that could be her here telling her story. And I hope, I hope in my heart, that she will determine that perhaps she doesn't know all the answers, and that perhaps the government will come to its senses and realize it has to change the criteria for us.
Barb says she would like to stay in her remote corner of the country, live as well as her body will allow. Michelle would like to be able to retire in comfort if his health gets worse. And Noella desperately wants to maintain the career she has struggled so hard to build. But if there is no financial help to come, there is still one thing government could do. Give them what the documented thalidomide survivors have. Official recognition, finally, that something was done to their bodies to make their lives such a struggle.
I want to be included. I want to be valued. I want to be accepted. Those are words that has never been in my life by the society. I want to be me. Acknowledge me. That's all.